The city of Boston fell silent today at 2:50 p.m., exactly 1 week after the first of two explosions ripped through the Boston Marathon, killing 3 people and wounding more than 170 near the finish line. And trading stopped on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange. Crystal Campbell, one of the people who died in the bombing, had her funeral today. Campbell, Sean Collier, Martin Richard, and Lu Ling Zai tragically lost their lives in the Boston bombings and the aftermath. Meanwhile, some 1,500 miles away in West Texas, residents continue to grieve for, as of now, the 14 people killed after the West Chemical and Fertilizer Company plant exploded and destroyed part of the town. New York Times described a small memorial for the first responders this way: they faced one another in 2 lines in the parking lot of a school, forming 2 walls of blue, as the body of a fellow firefighter was escorted between them in the night. The scale of the disaster could be measured by the length of the ceremony. The firefighters and responders stood in the cold for about 2 hours, forming an honor guard 12 times for 12 bodies. Among the firefighters who died was 52-year-old Kenny Harris, captain with Dallas Fire Rescue, who lived in West and had reportedly been off duty when he learned of the fire at the plant. Jerry Chapman, a member of the Abbott Volunteer Fire Department, and 41-year-old Morris Bridges of the West Volunteer Fire Department. There may not be a nobler civic undertaking than being a volunteer firefighter. It is mutual aid at its most praiseworthy. There's no individual upside and no pay and no perks other than getting to ride the engine down Main Street on July 4th. All there is risk. In almost any other week, the explosion in West Texas would have been a huge national news story, but it was overshadowed by the horrifying and incredibly compelling events coming out of Boston. I think one of the things that all of us have wrestled with this week, or even in the last few months in the wake of the mass shooting in Newtown, is how do we collectively respond to tragedy, think about its causes and aftermath, and formulate policies and motivate politics in response. The Sandy Hook shooting quickly segued into a policy debate about guns and gun safety. We're already seeing it in the aftermath of Boston with talk about enemy combatants and whether the marathon bombing should delay immigration reform, since both suspects were foreign-born. But West Texas has not yet captured our national political attention the same way. And part of this has to do with the specific intense focus we give terrorism since 9/11. And there's something about accidents that seem more random and somehow less menacing than the malevolent actions of individuals. But the way we process as tragedy and its aftermath has huge implications on the way our society acts. Last week, the night after the fertilizer plant exploded, we showed you a chart that deserves to be highlighted again. From 2000 to 2010, 3,033 Americans died from terror attacks. During that same time, more than 335,000 Americans died at the hands of a gun, while there were over 60,000 workplace deaths. Around this time last year, in a speech to commemorate Workers' Memorial Day, former Labor Secretary Hilda Solis said, "Every day in America, 12 people go to work and never come home. Every year in America, nearly 4 million people suffer a workplace injury from which some may never recover. These are preventable tragedies that disable our workers, devastate our families, and damage our economy." Now it looks increasingly like the fertilizer plant that exploded last Wednesday may have been a preventable tragedy. According to Reuters, the plant had been storing more than 1,300 times the amount of ammonium nitrate fertilizer that would normally alert the U.S. Department of Homeland Security to a possible safety oversight. That's 100 times more than the amount of ammonium nitrate used in the Oklahoma City bombing. Representative Benny Thompson, a Democrat from Mississippi and the ranking member of the House Committee on Homeland Security, released a statement on Friday calling the plant's safety measures into question. He said, quote, "It seems this manufacturer was willfully off the grid, yet we understand the Department of Homeland Security did not even know the plant existed until it blew up. I strongly believe that if the proper safeguards were in place, the loss of life and destruction could have been far less extensive." While many of the initial mysteries of Boston quickly appeared to come into focus, in Texas, we are left mostly with unanswered questions. First and foremost, what caused the catastrophic explosion at the plant? What responsibility does Donald Adair, owner of the West Fertilizer Corporation, have for the death, injuries, and mayhem that ensued? What regulations were in effect that were not applied, and what regulations do we need in the future to prevent something like this from happening again? And which federal agencies are best equipped to inspect and supervise plants like this? If the Department of Homeland Security didn't know about West Fertilizer Plant, what other plants does it not know about? All of these questions demand an answer. And through this week on All In, we're going to be tracking those answers down. We'll be right back with Click 3.
This broadcast by Chris is a poignant reminder of our ability to assess danger. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of plants exactly like this one in Texas that exploded all across America. And they're as much regulated as the one in Texas that exploded. A lot of people will say the economic benefits of having these plants in these small towns outweigh the dangers. But I wonder, would the people who invest and buy and sell the shares of companies that own these plants think the same if a plant like that plant that exploded in Texas was installed across the road from the stock exchange in New York? How do you think the stock exchange and all those financial geniuses would think? What would they say if a plant like the one that exploded in Texas installed itself across the road from the New York Stock Exchange? Do you think they would say, yeah, the city was perfectly fine, perfectly right to grant them the license to manufacture, fertilizer 25 metres from where we conduct our financial business, investing in that plant? We're perfectly fine with it. We're sure it's safe. Do you think that's what they would say? Do you think any city would allow a fertiliser plant like that to be built within the city limits or close to the city limits? Do you think the regulations that are imposed on these plants would be considered as adequate by these people if they had to live next door to it? Do you think the Koch brothers would love to have their new golf course, their new I don't know what you call it, clubhouse would be within the blast area of it if it blew up? Do you think any person who's an advocate of deregulation would find it perfectly okay for a chemical plant, a manufacturer that has dangerous chemicals that might explode if not treated properly, fine to have them within the blast area of their home, their children's school, anywhere where they actually live? Or do you think it's just poor people that deserve to run the risk of living within the blast area of these incredibly dangerous manufacturing facilities? I'm just saying, what do you think? And what do you think the decision should be of where these things are placed? Should they be placed for economical viability, the saving of a few cents on the dollar of the profits they make every year? Or do you think they should be placed and regulated in such a way that they are safe for everybody within the borders of your nation? Personally myself, I think they should be placed and regulated to make them safe for everybody, not just the people who can afford to live and buy property miles away from them. where something terrible can happen. But that's just me. I'm probably a radical, liberal, left-wing, Marxist, socialist, anti-corporate, anti-capitalist, fucked up, But that's just me, I'd love to plant one of these factories right next to the White House. And then say it's perfectly safe so long as they adhere to the strict regulations that make them safe. If you could run a plant like that right next to the White House, the regulations that apply to the factory next to the White House should apply to every factory in fucking the United States. And one should be right in the middle of Whitehall, right next to fucking Westminster. And so long as that factory is regulated so it doesn't explode, blow up or kill people, blow up Westminster, I would say, well, that's fine. You can build one right next door to my house. Because if the politicians who are sitting next to it every day think it's safe, and so long as the one next to me is regulated exactly the same, I would feel pretty safe. But until they do that, I'm going to say, fuck you. I don't want them anywhere near me. Plant them out in the middle of the desert. Build a road out there so you can bring the shit and build a railway out there, but plant them in the middle of the fucking desert. You know what I mean? That's just my view on shit, If rich people and politicians won't live next door to them, if they won't have them next door to the fucking schools their kids go to, why the fuck should I live next door to them? Why the fuck should my kid fucking go to the school next door? No. Politicians and rich people should live under the same threat, the same dangers as me. After all, they're only people. What gives them the right to be special? They're only people like me. They're not any more valuable. They're just worth more money. And what does that say about us when people worth more money are more valuable than me, or you, or your kids? What it tells you is you're not worth anything. You're worth as much money as they can make from you, and they don't give a shit if you get sick, your kids die, or you get blown the fuck up. They don't care. And yet that's their whole job. Their whole job is to care and make you safe. How's that safety, liberal, freedom, everybody's the same working out for you, you know what I mean? As far as I can tell, it's not working out at all. But I don't know, you think about it. Think about it for a bit. What you know. As long as you're fucking fat.